Oh, do you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it delicious?
The capital of light has long become a famous destination for its liberal and free lifestyle. Therefore, it is not surprising that information about adultery and bed partner relationships is widespread in the mass media. Even Hollywood stars who need to maintain their image the most do not hesitate and are comfortable in their extramarital relationships. In the world of Hollywood, marital and extramarital relationships seem to differ only by one thing: it has absolutely no weight in determining the fidelity of either person's relationship. Female movie stars do whatever they want with whoever they want, and men in the entertainment business follow suit. Back then, just about everyone joined in, and if you weren't invited to at least a few rowdy orgies in Tinseltown, then you were clearly a nobody. Stars are often involved, and with so many different partners, it's hard for them to keep track of all their intimate liaisons. And of course, the papers just stay in the safe forever and have no binding value on anyone. When it comes to promiscuity and Hollywood sex scandals, who is the first name that comes to your mind? Please leave a comment below this video, then watch the entire video to see if your thoughts match our findings. Below, we will list the classic Hollywood names that have slept with the most people in history. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe is considered the ultimate sex symbol of the 50s and early 60s. She was born in Los Angeles and raised as Norma Jean Baker. In the early 40s, Marilyn became a famous model and appeared in many magazines. She was noticed by filmmakers and signed a long-term contract with 20th Century Fox in 1950. In 1952, Marilyn Monroe became known throughout America when her nude photo was published in a calendar. The photo was taken by photographer Tom Kelly in 1949. Responding to the reason for taking this photo, Monroe said that at that time she was in need. Even though she had 3 husbands and famous lovers, Marilyn Monroe was still immersed in same-sex relationships. Although known as a sex bomb, Marilyn Monroe was surrounded by many men. But there are only 5 people worthy of being recorded in her love chronicle. 5 is a lot compared to normal people, but is quite modest compared to a famous sex bomb in Hollywood like Marilyn Monroe. Having been married 3 times and having relationships with 2 of the most powerful men in the country, Marilyn Monroe could not help but make the public curious and ask the question, who is the person Marilyn Monroe loves most passionately? Unfortunately, that was not her first husband. Marilyn Monroe was an unfortunate child. She doesn't know who her father is. Her mother suffered from mental illness and passed away early. Her life drifted along with 11 adoptive parents and landed at the orphanage. Her miserable childhood made her determined to leave the orphanage at all costs. A great opportunity came when she got a job as a parachute worker at a factory that produced parachutes for the U.S. military. Here she met James Dougherty and decided to marry this man even though she had no love. She hopes that marriage is a way to escape her lonely and restless feelings. Because there is no love, she never feels happiness even though her husband loves her very much. That marriage only lasted 2 years. 8 years after her first marriage, her heart skipped a beat when she met Joe DiMaggio, a famous American baseball player. They were like 2 lights drawn tightly together. Their dreamlike love affair has captivated the public. But that love affair only lasted less than 9 months. Through what this actress shows to the public, it can be easily seen that the person who makes her feel the most affection is Arthur Miller, her 3rd husband. Arthur Miller was a writer, a playwright, and the kind of intellectual she had dreamed of. She loved him so much that she entrusted all her faith and life's desires in his arms. She once wanted to have true happiness in this marriage. But happiness turned away from her when the child she was carrying was stillborn. Then the differences appeared more and more. While Arthur is alert and cold, Marilyn is sensitive and fragile, so they both went outside to find their dream lovers, and then the result of that marriage only lasted 5 years. Discussing Marilyn Monroe's love, it would be remiss not to mention the Kennedy brothers. Public opinion rumored that she had an affair with both brothers John and Robert Kennedy in the 1960s and caused a huge scandal. Initially, Marilyn Monroe was infatuated with the handsome, flamboyant President John Kennedy. But after realizing the dangerous rumors, John Kennedy kicked the ball into the hands of his younger brother Robert Kennedy. However, Marilyn Monroe soon despaired when both Kennedy brothers tried their best to get rid of her. Even though she loved Arthur Miller and other famous men passionately, Marilyn Monroe still reserved a lot of place in her heart for beautiful women. Despite having homosexual relationships with many beautiful women, Marilyn Monroe was always obsessed with Jane Lawrence, a fan, and Elizabeth Taylor, her enemy. Jane met Marilyn when she was 12 years old. They quickly became close after realizing that they both went through difficult lives at the orphanage. Jane has always struggled about her sexuality. The girl talked to Marilyn many times. At that time, Marilyn told Jane, whatever your gender is, it is meaningless. Love is love. One evening in 1955, Marilyn completely changed Jane's sexual experience when she suddenly kissed Jane on the thigh. This gay relationship lasted for 10 years, until Marilyn died at the age of 36. During her time with Jane, Marilyn also had a memorable one-night stand with movie star Elizabeth Taylor. In her diary, Elizabeth revealed that she and Marilyn had sex together at a grand birthday party that took place in the early 60s of the last century. Jayne Mansfield. Along with Marilyn Monroe, Jayne Mansfield is known as a famous actress of the American screen, a sexy symbol of Hollywood in the 50s and 60s of the last century. With a fiery body and shiny blonde hair, the beauty was one of the first people invited to pose for the cover of Playboy magazine. As a public figure, her private life also attracts great attention from the press. Between 1950 and 1966, Jayne went through 3 stormy marriages because of her amorousness. Jayne met Paul Mansfield at a Christmas Eve party in 1949. The two fell in love and quickly decided to get married in 1950 in Fort Worth, Texas. When she got married, Jayne was only 17 years old but was 3 months pregnant. However, after disagreements in their married life surrounding Jayne's ambition to become a celebrity, personal interests, and promiscuity, the young couple went their separate ways in 1955. The second man to officially enter Jayne Mansfield's life was Mickey Hargitay, a handsome actor and fitness trainer who won the Mr. Award in 1955. Not long after holding divorce papers from her first husband, Johnny agreed to marry Mickey when he knelt down and proposed to her with a 10-carat diamond ring worth $5,000 and an extremely luxurious wedding. But this marriage did not last long. After the sweetness with her new husband, Jayne still did not settle down and continued to have a public relationship with Enrico Bamba, the producer of the movie Panic Button, in which she participated. The fiery beauty's happiness was once again ruined. The two went to divorce court in 1963. Mansfield met her third husband, film producer Matt Cimber, while acting in the play Bus Stop with her second husband Hargitay in New York. The quick marriage took place in 1964 in Mexico. Just over a year later, the couple quickly separated and officially went to court in 1966. During their relationship, Cimber worked as an impresario for his wife and helped Jayne a lot in her career path. Their marriage began to crumble because Jayne became an alcoholic and openly cheated on her husband. Immediately after the divorce, Jayne moved in with her attorney, Sam Brody, who often argued with her when he was drunk and abused the blonde star's eldest daughter, Jane Marie. Her diverse personal life made the name Jayne Mansfield never cease to be hot in the newspapers, but while she was at the peak of her career and beauty, the beauty passed away forever at the age of 34 in a tragic car accident. Suspected murder. Elizabeth Taylor. Not Angelina Jolie, but purple-eyed legend Elizabeth Taylor is the third person with the most complicated love history in Hollywood. Married 8 times with 7 husbands and many men passing by in her life, do you find it surprising? Her journey is much more surprising, so brace yourself before we reveal all this. When she was 17 years old, she became engaged to William Pauley, Jr., the son of an American ambassador, but the engagement was canceled after only a short time. At the age of 18, she married Conrad Hilton, Jr. Only 8 months later, the marriage ended because she could not stand her husband's alcoholism and domestic violence. In 1952, Taylor married British actor Michael Wilding, 20 years older than her. They have 2 sons together. However, the marriage broke up in 1956 because as Taylor became more mature, she no longer felt attracted to the age gap between them. At the age of 25, Taylor married her third husband, movie producer Mike Todd. They have a daughter together named Elizabeth, like her mother. But 1 year after the wedding, Mike Todd passed away in a plane crash. After Mike Todd passed away, his friend, singer Eddie Fisher, comforted Elizabeth Taylor in her pain of losing her husband. Finally, Eddie became Taylor's 4th husband in 1959, but the female star's love story was not over. She continued to meet co-star Richard Burton and married this actor just 9 days after divorcing Eddie. Taylor and Burton became the most famous couple for American newspapers at that time. They were called by the nickname Liz and Dick. But peace did not last long. Their marriage ended in 1974. A year later, the couple reunited and married again in 1975, Taylor's 6th marriage. But their marriage only lasted less than a year before it broke up. In June 1976, Taylor divorced Burton, but only in December of that year did she continue to marry politician John Warner for the 7th time. When her husband was first elected to the Senate, Taylor felt that the life of a politician's wife was boring, causing her to turn to alcohol and drugs. Finally, they broke up in 1981. After the divorce, Taylor became engaged to lawyer Victor Luna and then businessman Dennis Stein, but the relationships went nowhere. Her 7th and final husband was a construction worker named Larry Fortensky. They got married in 1991 at the Neverland Ranch estate of Michael Jackson, Taylor's friend. But Taylor's marriage with Larry only lasted until 1996 when it broke up. Not only shocking with her 8 marriages, Elizabeth Taylor's life also became a hot topic of the press because of 2 scandals of stealing other people's husbands. Before becoming Taylor's 4th husband, Eddie Fisher was married to famous actress Debbie Reynolds. This scandal caused a huge stir. Elizabeth Taylor has been labeled the destroyer of family happiness ever since. Even more controversial is that Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor were once close friends. at Taylor's wedding with her previous husband Mike Todd. Husband and wife Debbie and Eddie also acted as bridesmaids and groomsmen. The two couples were close neighbors before Taylor decided to lift her friend's husband after her husband passed away. Later, after breaking up with Eddie, Taylor was shocked when she shared that she married her fourth husband just to ease the pain when her third husband passed away. Even while she was Eddie's wife, Taylor continued to have an affair with another man, notably a married man, Richard Burton. This heavenly scandal has caused the Vatican to heavily criticize Taylor and Burton's ethics. A member of the U.S. Congress also requested that Taylor be banned from returning to the United States. In 1964, Taylor was allowed to divorce Eddie, the husband she had snatched from someone else, so she could marry Richard Burton, a man who also had a family. 9 days after the divorce, Taylor quickly married Burton. But this love also did not have a happy ending as mentioned in the above paragraph. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah has had tumultuous relationships in her life with men and also women. She was drop-dead gorgeous, witty, rebellious, and not afraid in the least to speak her mind, regardless of how her words alienated people in her orbit. Bankhead was one of the most prominent sex symbols of her day. Writer and actor Emlyn Williams once described her sultry voice as being as steeped in sex as the human voice could possibly go without drowning. She notoriously got around, and her sexual appetite was said to be bottomless. Bankhead struggled with substance abuse and alcoholism, and reportedly smoked as many as 120 cigarettes a day, but wasn't shy about candidly discussing her many vices. She was openly bisexual at a time when that sexual orientation wasn't widely accepted. In an interview with Motion Picture magazine in 1932, Bankhead bragged that she hadn't had an affair in 6 months, complaining that it was 6 months too long. After the release of the Kinsey reports, Tallulah was quoted as saying that she didn't find anything shocking about Alfred Kinsey's conclusions. She went on to explain that she had numerous momentary love affairs and impromptu romances that she went into impulsively. In 1933, Bankhead almost died after having a 5-hour emergency hysterectomy procedure due to venereal disease. When she left the hospital, she told the doctor that he shouldn't assume that she had learned a lesson from the ordeal. The New Yorker reported that Bankhead claimed that she had slept with roughly 500 people in her life. In addition to her many affairs with male stars, Tallulah was also linked romantically with female celebs such as Greta Garbo, Hattie McDaniel, Beatrice Lillie, and Marlene Dietrich. Jayne Mansfield, this actress, aside from Mae West, was probably the most racy and sexually promiscuous actress in history. The blonde bombshell, who was famously photographed giving Sophia Loren an eye full of cleavage, had countless lovers. She was even rumored to have been JFK's mistress for a spell. Her most infamous romp was with Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey, although Anton only publicly claimed that he had an affair with her after the actress had passed away. Mae West, another blonde bombshell who deserves mention in this video, is this Brooklynite actress who took Hollywood by storm in the early 1930s with her deliberately loose image. She was someone ahead of her time. She supported gay rights, slept with African-American lovers, and openly ridiculed the traditional institution of marriage. When Mae West was 17, she married vaudeville actor Frank Sakis, who performed under the stage name Frank Wallace. She attempted to keep that marriage a secret, but it was revealed to Clara Bow. Clara Bow was the screen's first sex symbol, cinema's it girl who exuded sex appeal, charisma, and excitement. But having it doesn't bring her any real happiness. In fact, it ended up becoming a burden for Bow, who was never really embraced by the Hollywood elite because she was not considered a serious actress. Despite the admiration and love of her fans, Bow could not shake off her childhood demons, and when her on-screen life began to parallel her wild image on screen, many Hollywood has turned its back on her. By the time she retired from acting at age 28 in 1931, her life was filled with scandal. Audiences had never seen anyone like Bow when she appeared in the mid-20s. Good girls like Mary Pickford and Lillian Gish were the top female stars of the day. However, Bow is the epitome of the roaring 20 flapper. Clara Bow is fierce and sexually confident, a true role model, said David Sten, author of Clara Bow Running Wild. Miss Bow has tamed men. She teaches men to come to her. She never gives up her autonomy or independence. Her rise to fame as the embodiment of sexual liberation in the 1920s and her fall from grace resulted from scandal, poor career planning, the advent of sound, and her mental problems caused her to be frequently hospitalized. Nearly murdered by her mother, who was then sent to a reformatory, and sexually abused by her father, Bow could only have sex with men, Sten said. As her star grew, rumors abounded about her passionate sex life. She was engaged to 5 men in just 4 years. Bow's life seemed to foretell the tragedies to come. She has been involved with several men off-screen, and her romantic life has been the subject of much speculation and hurtful rumors, including a pamphlet circulated by an assistant, out with stories about Bow's relationships. She is rumored to have had many partners at once and endured several broken marriages. There were rumors that she slept with the entire USC football team, and she frequently referred to her boyfriends as engaged, which only created controversy as she quickly moved on to the next one. Louise Brooks, this actress, had an extremely short but successful film career. After leaving her first husband, director Eddie Sutherland, she fell in love with George Preston Marshall, owner of the Washington Redskins. In the end, she left him to marry someone else, whom she also left after only 6 months of marriage. She had many lovers, including Greta Garbo, and was not averse to being photographed nude, which she did frequently. In 1931, Bow married actor Rex Bell, who was famous for starring in Western films. The couple first met on the set of the 1930 film True to the Navy and married the following year. Together, they had 2 sons, Tony Beldam, who changed his name to Rex Anthony Bell Jr., and George Beldam Jr. After retiring from acting in 1933, Box and Bell lived on a ranch in Nevada with their children. The couple was married for more than 3 decades before Bell died of a heart attack on July 4, 1962. Does the recent information make you sweat? I, too, felt stunned by their love history that was as long as a young woman's legs. However, as you might expect, this list is not over yet. Before we continue, please wait for me to wipe off the sweat and take a sip of water. Please leave a comment below this video about names that you think have a love history as long as the ones I've mentioned. Let's continue. Mae West. Another blonde bombshell worthy of a mention in this video is the Brooklyn actress, who took Hollywood by storm in the early 1930s with her deliberately bohemian image. Mae West's list of lovers includes people much older and younger than this actress. She was ahead of her time. She supported gay rights, slept with African-American lovers, and openly mocked the traditional institution of marriage. Sometime between 1909 and 1910, West met Frank Wallace, an up-and-coming vaudeville singing and dancing man. The story goes that Wallace was introduced to West by her mother, Tilly, who saw an opportunity for her to collaborate with a traveling performer. After a few weeks of intense training, they performed and took to the stage. The tour went deep into the Midwest, away from the protective supervision of West's mother. According to her biographers, Wallace proposed to her several times, but she refused, instead becoming romantically involved with several other male actors. She was counseled by an older actress, Etta Wood, about her evil ways, and insisted that marriage would protect her from being alone and getting pregnant. From there, West apparently had a change of heart, and on April 11, 1911, she and Frank Wallace were married by a justice of the peace in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Only 17 years old, she lied about her age on her marriage certificate. 18 was the legal age for marriage in Wisconsin at the time, and both newlyweds promised to keep it a secret. Marriage to the public and her parents. The union remained secret until 1935, when West began his film career and an advertising agent found the marriage certificate among some old papers. For years, she maintained that she and Wallace never lived together as husband and wife. She broke up shortly after they returned to New York in the summer of 1911. Later that year, West auditioned for and was cast in her first Broadway show, Ella Broadway, a comedy. The show ended after just 8 performances, but West was a success. In the audience on opening night were 2 successful Broadway artists, Lee and J.J. Schubert, and they cast her in their production of Vera Violetta, which also featured Al Jolson. She was only on the show for a short time due to conflicts with the show's female star, Gaby Deslys, but the experience paid off. She continued to perform in vaudeville and off-Broadway in New York. It was during this time that she met Guido Diro, another cabaret artist. The result is a passionate relationship, and the two try to be together as much as possible, regularly arranging joint dates. They both display love, lust, and jealousy openly, and are known for their outward displays of emotion and heated arguments. For a short time, the couple considered marriage, and Diro even asked West's parents for her permission to marry. They were still unaware of her previous marriage to Frank Wallace, and she eventually divorced in 1920. Tilly firmly refused, reminding her daughter of the pitfalls of couples in show business. West followed her mother's wishes but continued to see Diro. Her mother continues to sabotage their relationship. Finally, Tilly directly expressed her disagreement with Diro, telling West that he was not good enough for her. She reluctantly complied and within a short time ended her relationship with Diro. Even though she only had one husband, she slept with many different men. This fact is undeniable. One of her most famous lovers was Paul Novak, whom she claimed was the love of her life. One of the musclemen in West's legendary 1950s nightclub chorus line that performed in Las Vegas and toured the country for 5 years, Novak quickly fell in love with West, who was nearly 30 years his senior. The epitome of strong, silent, and extremely private to the end, Novak always tried to stay in the background, content to let the public believe that he was merely West's bodyguard, while when in fact he had become her husband in every way except name. West and Novak are an easygoing couple who get along very well. They enjoyed small, intimate gatherings at which West liked to regale his friends with songs and cheeky stories. She never tried to dominate the conversation but was content to sit back and listen to Novak and others expound on current events. Novak likes to laugh as much as she does, and he's a good, funny storyteller. Their mutual devotion grew over the years and was touching, but their initial romance was tumultuous and took years to stabilize. In a way, they are both strong-willed loners who love their freedom. Novak's boundless love gave West an enviably happy and secure old age. With his constant protection, his attention to her diet and exercise, West was able to live her life as always until she suffered a series of strokes claimed her life at the age of 87. Not only in her private life but also in her work, she also chose an acting path with sexy scenes, despite all detractors. The vaudeville actress was known as one of Hollywood's biggest sex symbols in the 1920s and 1930s. Initially, when movie posters were released, they were criticized for being terrible and too vulgar. But when they saw the movie, they realized she was a very funny person and she knew her job. She's not someone who will let people run over her, and she's definitely not a single woman. Vieira shared that audiences were immediately captivated by West, whose drooping hourglass figure, curve-hugging, diamond-studded dresses proudly flaunted her assets. Not only did she done him wrong break box office records in the United States, but it also attracted audiences worldwide and saved Paramount from bankruptcy. West's next film, 1933's I'm No Angel, became an even bigger sensation. The Los Angeles Times noted that after 3 more films, West was earning the highest salary of any Hollywood star at $300,000 per picture and an additional $100,000 for story or script. Like her ambitions from the beginning of her career and her choice to follow a controversial path, Mae West has always persevered in her own way. And she is always proud of her sex projects in her own unique ways, and the woman who personified sexual innateness does not regret doing things her way. Ava Gardner. With her deep blue eyes and luscious lips, Ava Gardner was one of the sexiest women of the 1940s and 1950s. She had a major crush on a beauty herself. In her eyes, Elizabeth Taylor is only beautiful, but Ava Gardner is beautiful. In addition to the love affair in the mirror and the remaining bag of jewelry, Ava is equally passionate about men, spirits, cigarettes, stage lights, and tear room atmosphere. As soon as she entered Hollywood, famous actor Mickey Rooney fell in love with her, and Gardner became the first of the actor's 7 wives. 9 months later, they divorced. After that, she began a relationship with singer-actor Frank Sinatra when the two first met in 1943 and reached a climax in 1949. Unable to bear her husband's adultery, Sinatra's wife, Nancy, finally agreed to a divorce, and he and Gardner married in 1951. This was the marriage that consumed the most ink in the press. Their love story is like a novel. And now I will tell you about a novel story about an ironic love. SSU, when deciding to get together despite the marriage papers, Ava for everyone turned into a Razlook, Nitsu, and libertine, and Sinatra's first wife constantly did not want to divorce because she thought that the adventures save her husband's interesting, not serious, and come up. He will return to the family. This novel did both Gardner and Sinatra a disservice, all of whom demanded their participation. After a month of persuasion, Sinatra's wife signed the divorce papers, and this news was like a bomb exploding to the public, because before that, Frank was considered an exemplary man. Frank was fired from his job, which meant that there would be no more songs and films with his participation. Soon he bought a ring with a large diamond, yes, for the money of his future lover, because he did not have his own. Before long, he made her a public proposal, and she agreed. Ava told reporters about her wedding that gentlemen prefer blondes and marry brunettes. By the way, it was her 3rd marriage. They got married, life continued as usual, restaurants, dances, fun, but then in the studio where Ava worked before marrying Sinatra, realized that her participation in the film had always been meaning 100% success for the movie. More movies. Ava, all the time she spends with Frank, tries to dominate everything, and he retaliates when something doesn't work for him, starts little plots. She also flirts directly with him on the pants. Her costs increased, but Sinatra could not compete with Elvis Presley and the Beatles. He was not published. The audience of Sinatra fans has decreased. Girls also love other idols. Soon he lost his magical velvet voice. Frank became more and more forgotten, and Ava, on the contrary, became famous, and then she was invited to participate in the film. But the shooting took place in Africa. Sinatra did not want to let his loving wife away, but Ava still looked awkward taking pictures. Frank at this time drank. Every day he called his wife, confessed her love, and called for a few minutes. Sinatra hired a detective to report on all of Ava's suitors, and she said after filming that she was tired of such a marriage and went to cure her nerves in Spain, without a husband. He in revenge began to spin novels with young Hollywood actresses, cured his voice, and began to sing again. In Spain, Ava fell in love with a mercenary, and when Sinatra called her to brag about recording a new album, she informed him that she now had a new love, and she threw it. Frank signs a very profitable contract, finds a new love, and goes to the movies in Spain for a new movie already with his new love. During this time, Ava became disillusioned with the Spanish apparatus, and when she discovered her husband's new lover, she became depressed because she had agreed to return to her husband since they were officially not yet divorced. However, she was the first to file for divorce, as Sinatra asked for this, and soon he married an actress who was decades younger than him. Before the wedding, Sinatra called Gardner and admitted that she was and remains his only love, even though they were divorced. Gardner is not only beautiful, but also elegant, graceful, and confident. It seemed that she was also aware of her beauty everywhere she went. All eyes were on her, and Gardner liked that. Besides his 3 marriages to Rooney, Sinatra, and Artie Shaw, Gardner's life was filled with love affairs and turmoil. It can be said that her life was a symbol of the glamour of Hollywood at that time. While in Spain, Hemingway invited Gardner to watch bullfighting, and several bullfighters fell in love with Gardner, including Luis Miguel Dominguin. Her relationship with Dominguin was widely publicized, and intimate photos were taken of them while they were married. At that time, Gardner had not yet finalized her divorce from Sinatra, and the matador was engaged to Italian actress Lucia Bose. The actress also visited her friend in Havana, Cuba, and spent time at Hemingway's famous villa. It is said that once, while Gardner was swimming without a swimsuit in his swimming pool, he ordered the staff do not change the water in the pool. Hemingway died 30 years before Gardner, and since then she never remarried. She lived her whole life in her own way and enjoyed it to the fullest. We should not forever remember 3 husbands, a dozen lovers including Spanish bullfighters, but only imagine the all-night laughter of an unhappy beauty. After 20 years of fame as a womanizer who could destroy other people's families, Ava Gardner destroyed her own life by choosing men who she herself admitted were worthless. They were nothing, so she had to change people like changing clothes, between 2 bottles of champagne and fiery bullfights. Except for one case, Frank Sinatra. Until the end of her life, he still kindly called her to wish her a happy birthday and took care of her on a private plane from London to America for medical treatment. Little do we know that in the glorious world of Hollywood, a star who is making money should not get pregnant and have children. She had 2 abortions in the 6 years of living with Sinatra, and also campaigned for her husband to have a chance to regain the glory of cinema and new music after the film From Here to Eternity. The most pitiful thing is the beauty's confession in that world: husband and wife don't take care of each other. So how can we take care of our children? The most tragic thing is that she passed away without any children, leaving only the echoes of a time gone by. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh, legendary star of stage and screen, has been labeled a nymphomaniac, a derogatory term that makes it sound as if she were a sex addict. In fact, she fought a lifelong battle with bipolar disorder during a time when the disease was not mentioned. Her condition is believed to have originated from a horrific miscarriage in 1945, but evidence of the disease emerged long before the incident and before any subsequent diagnosis. Bipolar disorder has been called manic depressive throughout Leigh's adult life, and it is a long-term illness that must be managed throughout a person's life. The symptoms are severe and differ from what might be considered mood swings. The brain disorder often develops in adolescence or early adulthood and is not easy to detect because the symptoms often appear as separate problems. One symptom of Leigh disorder is increased sexual desire, leading to several extramarital affairs. She had an affair with Australian actor Peter Finch and told the story to screenwriter Terence Rattigan, who used it as the basis for the film The VIPs, starring Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Olivier spent years struggling with Leigh's illness, the infidelity it caused, and the increasingly irrational behavior that erupted from it. In 1948, during a tour of the Old Vic, Leigh lost her shoes and refused to go on stage during a performance in Christchurch, New Zealand. Olivier slapped Leigh across the face in front of the company. She hit him back. Lawrence said the tour sparked the end of their marriage. According to Anthony Holden's book Olivier, British playwright Noel Coward believed if Larry had strongly objected to Vivien years ago and given her a good clip, he would have avoided a bit of trouble. Mental illness is much less stigmatized now but was completely misunderstood then. In 1956, Leigh quit filming Coward after becoming pregnant. She suffered a second miscarriage, leading to another bout of depression. Towards the end of their marriage, Leigh hit Olivier in the face with a wet towel. He lost control and threw her across the bedroom. She appeared in public the next day wearing a black eye patch. The Oliviers divorced in 1960 after 20 years of marriage. In 1967, Leigh had a relapse of tuberculosis, leaving her bedridden for weeks. She died in July that year at the age of 53. Her body was cremated and scattered near her home in Blackboys, East Sussex. However, her legacy has never waned. She captures a raw and naked emotional energy that endures on screen. While her own disorder may have opened her window to the madness in her characters, the courage she showed in expressing those anxieties continues to inspire for art and now science. The world learned more about broken souls and on a personal level by watching Leigh play them on screen. We also know more about the disorder itself because her history is an educational chapter in psychological knowledge. That's more than can be said about her story in Hollywood. Lupe Velez. Lupe Velez was Hollywood's first Latina icon, but if her name isn't known today, it's probably because of her dark end. Velez is not only one of the most charismatic stars on screen, but also one of the most scandalous. When the cameras aren't rolling, her love life keeps gossip columnists busy. The following is one of the many stories Hollywood tells about Lupe Velez. This version appears in the 1932 new movie and begins when Lupe is 12 years old. Even at that tender age, Lupe had sex appeal, and no race was as quick to recognize this quality as the Mexicans. The house was surrounded by boys of all ages who whistled in various keys. To Lupe, those children were simply a means to an end. She had a fascinating curiosity about movie stars, and she discovered, even at a young age, that her kisses could sell. She would offer a chaste salute on her manly cheeks in exchange for the image of a star or a colored ribbon to wrap in her dark braid. So men become her tools to get what she wants, and the house is surrounded by them. Her calmer sister, Josephine, carried notes between Lupe and the boys, and Lupe's sharp little ears soon learned the different whistles of the young lovers. This remarkable story links the origins of Lupe's hypersexuality, her willingness to use men as tools for her own purposes, with the origins of her desire to become an electro star. Image. Lupe, young Mexican girl, craves the glamour photos of Hollywood stars and is willing to trade her sexual favors to get them, trading her bronze skin for shimmering celluloid. Lupe is characterized as a woman who knows how to use her body to get what she wants. One fan magazine writer enthused, "I've never seen a body so completely controlled. I haven't asked Lupe to wiggle her ears, but everything else she has can move at will." The Hollywood press repeatedly portrayed Velez as a woman who was very proud of her body. Her promiscuity became part of how her stardom was packaged and promoted. Lupe was quoted as saying, "I don't like to see any man too often. The same face over and over again." Before long, his nose looked like a dog's nose to Lupe. Velez often shows disdain for public opinion and conventional morality, asserting that people like to talk and I want to give them something to talk about. If Velez is remembered today, it is not for her on-screen performances, as her career was characterized by supporting roles in major films and leading roles in programmers. B-rated movies, but because of the scandal surrounding her life and death, she gave people something to talk about decades after her last film faded into oblivion. Kenneth Anger devoted an entire chapter to Velez in his underground classic Hollywood Babylon, referring to her in the book's signature purple prose as the Hollywood party girl with the spinning pussy. Reversing the terms of the prostitution rumor, Anger implied that Lupe, in her last years, i.e., at age 35, was reduced to procuring sex from lady pleasers. Professional older women, guys going out with gigs as gigolos. Velez is portrayed as both a violent shrew and a whore, simultaneously becoming an object of men's fear and men's desire, a woman with a fearful and unpredictable personality, and she was a woman with an insatiable sexual desire. As one film magazine explained, Lupe's antics have been the frustration and joy of Hollywood for a long time. Those who seek to win her affections in private will find courtship is a dangerous business, for there is no telling when Lupe, the Dio-like maiden, might become Lupe, the angry miniature whirlwind. They say there is no man grandmother except Gary Cooper has fully recovered from one of her rampages. Anger gives a vivid description of the dangers of loving Lupe through her description of her relationship with Johnny Weissmuller. The love-hate madness of their intense passion often left its mark. Of Lupe on Weissmuller's divine body, the hickeys on that Thor's throat, the annular bite marks on his perfect kisses, the eloquent scratches on his ivory back. Lupe, we learn, makes love like a beast, is often raged with jealousy, and also frequently feels an uncontrollable urge to seduce other men. She approaches the image of a wandering uterus when talking about her flirting urges. "Whenever I see a man, there's something about it that makes me wink at him. I can't control myself anymore, and you can't help me either. Makes you unable to breathe. Sometimes I say I'll never flirt again. I would be sick of not being able to flirt with certain men." As expected, there were many broken engagements and tumultuous romances in the years that followed, and one marriage was more scandalous than any other. In 1943, Velez fell in love with Mexican actor Arturo de Cordova, but there was just one problem: he was married. Does Velez care? Absolutely not. In fact, she even told gossip columnists that they were engaged. Is this a good idea? I think you can guess. Lupe Velez was ready to marry de Cordova and give up her acting career to become a housewife, but in this case, great hopes led to an even greater heartbreak. De Cordova's wife refused to grant him a divorce, and he and Velez broke up. Despite the string of relationships she's had since Gary Cooper, no one ignites the fire in Lupe Velez like he does until she meets a shadowy figure named Harold Ramond. Velez's friends were suspicious and certain that he was taking advantage of her. She ignored all their warnings and rushed into the relationship full speed. With Ramond, Velez faces old problems she encountered in her previous romances, and as the months pass, her friends' warnings begin to ring louder and louder in her ears. Her Hollywood connections helped jumpstart his faltering career, but she didn't get what she wanted from him. By September 1944, they were estranged, but Velez was in for a surprise. In November, Velez went to see her doctor, who gave her surprising news. She was pregnant. Velez was also extremely scared, confused, and heartbroken. She was 3 months along, which limited her options. Velez's agent called Ramond to ask what he was up to, and Ramond's answer was cold. He says he will make a fake marriage for Velez, but she must sign a contract attesting that she knows the marriage is fake and only for the baby to bear its father's name. They announced their engagement, but his callous demands rubbed her the wrong way and she was ready to snap. No man would act like he was doing Velez a favor by marrying her. Within weeks, she called a gossip columnist to tell them the engagement was off. Her agent Beau Ruse says she talked about hiding out in Mexico or finding one of those infamous doctors in Hollywood who performed appendix surgeries, if you know what I mean. But then she proposed a disturbing third option. She told him that suicide could also solve her problems. This horrifies Ruse, and he makes her promise that she won't do anything rash. But despite all the obstacles, she still chose the most negative and lonely way to solve the problem. Despite her reputation as a lustful woman, Velez was almost always a lone woman until her final days. Now is the time to hear from you. Can you think of any other actors from Hollywood's golden age who were notoriously promiscuous? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, remember to give this video a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest content.